Hello, it's so good to see you. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, my name is Steve Hampton. I'm a third generation, born and raised in the truth, as we all know it. Third generation on my mom's side, second generation on my dad's. And that's asterisked a little bit because he professed for a hot minute and he had an affinity for unfiltered cigarettes and distilled spirits, so he didn't make it too far. But
Hmm.
that's where that is. In terms of my involvement in the church and my family's involvement, we have three workers that are related to us by marriage, three workers that are related to us by blood. And also, we have one convention owner that's related to us. And I think that kind of colors my experience in that regard. We have relatives, blood relatives that were abusers. We have blood relatives that were victims. And that kind of colors my experience of what makes it unique and how I feel about it. And it's a blow to find out somebody in your family has done something like that. It's you don't see it coming, and you're not equipped to handle it, and it's kind of breathtaking. And then, as all those things were going on in 2023, it was a lot to handle. But
Hmm.
I'm going to dial back to about 2021 and just kind of give a prelude to Dean Brewer. My mom died. She was 94 years old in April of 2021. And in terms of momentous life occasions, when you lose your second parent, that's a big deal. You're
Hmm.
alone. There's no touchstone anymore. It's gone. And I mean,
Hmm.
her death was not a surprise, obviously, at 94. But she was a big part of the truth from way, way back when. And she loved the truth. She loved the workers. And she instilled that in me. And I think it made for a good childhood. It made for a good number of years, decades. I don't know if I mentioned I'm 69 years old. So,
Hmm.
I've been doing it for a while. And to have the rug pulled out from you at age 66, it's like, ooh. So,
Hmm.
but anyway, then in 2022, we relocated from Phoenix, Arizona to St. Louis, Missouri. We had moved a lot. We lived in six different states, and I've traveled all around the world. So it
Hmm.
was not huge, but usually people our age are kind of settled and, they're not pulling everything up and going, let's go. But uh,
Hmm.
grandbabies do that to you. So anyway, then in 2023 on March 7th, I remember that day, I was supposed to be getting my review from my boss. Instead of being a review, it was a layoff, which
Oh man.
when it was all said and done, it was a bunch of people my age that were kind of like, it's time for you to go. And then on top of all of that, at the end of that month, we had a trip to Portugal and Spain planned. So when it all came to a head in 2023, it's like I kind of had to triage my life. It's like, I got it. There's some things that you have to handle: insurance, Social Security. Anyway, we got through it, and off we went on vacation. Came back, and let me pull up something I have to read to you. It's not an exit letter per se, but kind of a prelude to the exit. Again, it's one of those things we kind of didn't see it coming, but we had a meeting in our home in Arizona or Scottsdale where we lived there. It was a union meeting. And it was kind of funny when the workers said they wanted to have a meeting at our place. I didn't assume that I was the elder. And it's like, so I
Mm.
asked, I go, are you intending for me to be the elder? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm thinking in my head, it's like, you got nobody better than me. It was just kind
Hmm.
of like, I didn't see it coming. But anyway, I told them, sure, glad to do it. And then when we moved to Missouri, where we went to meeting the lady that lived there, her husband had passed for several years ago, but they still had a meeting there. Anyway, on
Hmm.
union meetings there, I was the elder. And this little note that I'm going to read to you here kind of reflects a point that we had come to, a decision. And anyway, it just says, good morning. As a matter of conscience, we will not attend meeting this morning. We love our fellowship and each of you. I need to speak with Craig. That's the overseer, whose name I
Hmm.
didn't want to mention, but I just did.
Hmm.
Um, that probably should have occurred prior to this message, though I do not want to dodge the issue out of respect for you. We can't support our ministry in its current disarray. An individual with a known allegation of criminally unbecoming behavior entered our home recently. We did not get to choose. I can't abide that. There's no desire to be divisive, and I have no point of view to sell. Until the ministry gets its house in order, I think it best not to be present. Holding a position of responsibility makes me complicit in supporting a ministry that has run amok. Being the union meeting elder is something I can no longer do. it would seem disrespectful. Once I speak with the overseer, I believe he would demand that I do so. I apologize for sharing this via text on a Sunday morning. I'll just read her reply because I think it's germane and it's brief. She said, "Good morning, Steve. Nothing I can say will change your mind, and I do not attempt to persuade you. Something we heard at convention last year has stayed with me, and it is happening. The enemy is focused on destroying two things right now, the church and the ministry. It is a time of grief, disbelief, disappointment, disgust, and great sorrow. But I believe it is time to stand for truth and be a part of the cleansing out of evil. We all have a feeling of what should be done for the future of this kingdom. I hope we can be restored to fellowship again. We love you." That was June 11th of 2023. And we didn't go to meeting then, but on June the 18th, we went to a meeting in Evansville, Indiana. It's where my wife's got some family. And so I thought, well, we'll go to meeting, and there's nobody knows how I feel, and I won't cause a disturbance or distraction. And so that all went well. And then we came back meeting on the 25th in St. Louis, and it's just one of those moments in time you just will never forget. We left meeting and we're driving home. We both kind of turned to each other. It's like, that's the last one. And a lot of that had to do some doctrinal issues, but a lot of it was the response to Dean Brewer. And if you remember back in the time, and I know because you were involved with CCF, you were as involved as anybody or as aware. Every day, just a bombardment of new news, and most of it not good. I mean, I look at a big picture and I see there's financial criminal activity, there's immorality, child sexual abuse, non-consensual, sexual issues. And I didn't want to be in a position where I was deposed, perhaps, and had to say yes to questions like, were you aware of this? When were you aware of this? I mean, the way I want it to be is as soon as I knew, I cut my ties, because I can't condone the behavior and I can't facilitate the behavior. And so there was a period of time that there was 4 gentlemen here that were meeting, and then there was another gentleman who was calling me. His purpose was to save my soul, and God bless him for that. I mean, I feel that man loved my soul, and to this day he still does. I know he does. But it was kind of a long way to where we got to the same point of view, because he was like, why don't you fight it from the inside? Like, I can't. It's as a matter of conscience, I can't be a part of it. And I said, I wish you all well, and I'm not saying that you're wrong to stay, but I said, personally, I gotta go. And that was that. And then the other 3 gentlemen that I were meeting with, there was one of them that was very adamant. You need to be fighting this from the inside. And there was a period of about maybe 72 hours during that whole crisis that I thought, yeah, if the right people do the right thing at the right time, might be able to get this glued back together. But then when, people in charge were digging their heels in, it's like, oh my goodness. And just to divert for a minute, the issue of being bitter, or the issue of being, somebody who's lost out, it's like, no, I haven't lost anything. I've gained more than you can imagine. It's really funny for somebody who's professed all their life to say, when they're 69 years old, I've finally met Jesus. And, there's finally love for others. Even as an elder, I never really thought about people in the meeting. It never occurred to me to love their souls. I loved them, and, we had good friends. But as a keeper of their souls, I was delinquent, a slow learner, I guess. But now, love everybody's soul. It's the right thing to do. One of the gentlemen, his wife had shared something about how can you restore something never really existed. It's like, well, of course you can't. Anyway, long story short, all these guys now are not going to meetings. And I was a little impatient, And there was one of them that I thought, and I knew this guy's parents, I knew his grandparents, and I thought he'll be the last man standing. He's never getting out. And his wife has got a sister in the work, and I just thought those are not the people that are going to quit this at all, ever. Anyway, lo and behold, they're all out now, and everybody's happier. I mean, and none of us have got an identical path. It's just we're finding our way. And The thing
Mm-hmm.
about my particular situation and my wife, it's like, okay, they pulled the rug out from underneath us. We've separated because we had to. And we don't know if it's going to last or not, but we can finally start to look at the world as it really is and look at the Bible
Mm-hmm.
with, not a doubting mind, but it's like, we'll read that and figure out the context, figure out the timing, figure out the place.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you just think of practical matters about preserving scripture. It's like from Christ's time till now, I mean, okay, whoever wrote the King James Bible, those people that were commissioned to do that, what was their data storage and retrieval system? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and
Mm-hmm.
how many people, came and went through the project? Who had biases? Who people who were doing freestyle editing? You don't know. So, to go, well, turn to this verse and look at this, and that's absolute. It's like it's just not. I got to admit that I had a hard time with the King James Bible letting go. We had other
Mm-hmm.
Bibles here, but I was just not that curious, I guess. But anyway, I've learned more since Dean Brewer than I could have ever imagined, and I'm just happy about it. But then, anyway, then we stopped having because I think at that time the guys were frustrated or they were just like maybe they got it. I wish them all the best in whatever final path. And all of us have looked at different churches. We've looked at 4 or 5, and one we've gone to 5 or 6 times. Still not a perfect solution.
Mm-hmm.
I find it a little jarring when the pastor goes up to the lectern and people are applauding. It's like, oh, stop. That's just people
Mm-hmm.
expressing joy. There's nothing wrong with it. It's I think for a person my age, it's just a little jarring. But anyway, I've become more accepting during the process, so I'm happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
Made me a better
Mm-hmm.
person. But the other thing too is my spiritual needs don't run on a 168-hour thing. So there's some days it's like, you know what? I do not feel the need to go to church. Not that church, not any church. It's like I can stay here and commune with God right in my chair next to the fireplace.
Mm-hmm.
That's that. I've always been curious about why people follow a schedule like that. Like I used to work in aerospace. I worked for all the big airframers, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed, Sikorsky
Mm-hmm.
helicopter, and staff meetings. I told more than one boss, I'm like, why don't the staff call the staff meetings? It's like, I don't have something to say every 168 hours. And if I did, you'd know it before the staff meeting anyway. But I digress.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. There was a article in the New York Times last week that I thought was very germane to our situation with our church. There's a law firm there, Paul Weiss. It's a white
Mm-hmm.
shoe, big time, fancy law firm. And their chairman was found to have had association with Jeffrey Epstein. And that
Mm-hmm.
organization got it right. The chairman gone immediately because there's no lack of confidence in your leadership. You've failed. Doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you somebody that made a mistake that the broader organization can't live with. And something I would have loved to have seen in our church. It's like whoever the top guy is, why didn't he step down? And that's a whole afternoon's conversation there. Anyway, that was one of the other problems with the church that I became aware of, acutely aware of. It was hidden in plain sight all along, but it's like the organization has no oversight. Who's
Mm-hmm.
calling strikes and balls? Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole financial issue, that was a big concern and I never really thought about. And during our years of marriage, we've been married, be 44 years this spring. When we first got married, we never thought to give money to the workers. And then as we grew up and, became aware,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, yeah, they need some sustenance, something to make their lives go around. And then as we prospered, the workers prospered. Well, prior to Brewergate, we had some brother workers at the house, and Barb always took care of the gift by the bed or, wherever it was left, the envelope. And I
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I never knew, just didn't know. But this one brother worker, he said, "Thank you for the gift." He says, "That was extremely generous." Well, you're welcome. And I asked Barb, I'm like, "Tell me about this extremely generous gift." And the amount's not important, but I mean, it was a generous gift. And then I
Mm-hmm.
got to thinking, it's like, okay, these are guys that are driving a late model Toyota Camry, paid for by us, insured by us, fueled by us. They've got meals squared away. They got lodging squared away. What would they do with all that money? And then we lived in Southern California. We lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. So, fairly affluent neighborhoods, high net income individuals. And, there's people that are doctors, people that are lawyers, people that are, other types of professionals. And you're just like, if say they spend 2 nights, if every third day they're getting that kind of a financial infusion, and that gets, hoovered up to the overseer. And I mean, I know it's not that way in every state for sure. There's some that are probably very needy, but at some point, yeah, lots and lots of money. And where's that money going? What good's it doing? I happen to be an MBA. I never practiced, finance or any of that for a living, but you would just think that an organization that has any income, any disbursement of cash, generally accepted accounting principles, like let's keep the books. And there's none of that. And again, I don't need to know where the money comes from. I don't need to know who gave. I don't need to know who didn't give. And those that did give, I don't need to know how much. But on January 1, it's like, if I open the ledger, how much money do you have today? And is that a surplus from last year? Or are you in a deficit condition? That should be known. That should not be hidden. I think. Again, I don't have a point of view to sell, but that's just how I feel it should be. Oh, and another thing too, a little digression. It's like the whole business with the sister workers. I feel that they should be co-equals at the very least. There should be some lady at the top that has at least an advice and consent role, if not a veto role, or that they're not excluded. And I don't know how popular that idea is. I mean, I'm sure women of your age would go, well, yeah, why not? So my daughter, she's soon to be 40 years old, and she's all about being a feminist and giving the patriarchy a reminder that, hey, things need to change. And she's right, I think. So the level of subservience that I've heard of, I mean, the idea of them washing the brother workers' clothes, like, let's knock that off. Wash your own clothes, It appears that the workers often are very unkind to their own. They're not nice to each other. And when you're preaching a gospel of love, it's like it's a message that at the very least it conflicts. And then this idea of the homeless, penniless, celibate ministry, it's like, well, okay, you guys don't have homes, but some of you betrayed the celibate vow. And, it might not be the wrong thing or the right thing to say here, but I mean, consensual relations between workers. Again, it's a conflicting message if they're partaking that way, but that's the least of our problems. It's like when there's crimes against kids, it's like that should be your daily priority until it's fixed, and it shouldn't take that long. Again, that's just Steve Hampton talking, but so yeah, at age 66, you wake up and what you thought you knew is not exactly what you knew. And it's ironic, back in the late 70s, we had a family member mail a secret sec to us and some other materials, and I was livid. Just like, how dare you try to interfere with my salvation? What are you thinking? And that's all without taking a look at it. And you just saw what the cover said, and not any intellectual curiosity or any critical thinking. It's just like, that's bad, go away. And the workers were like, yeah, you don't need to be reading that. Of course, that was pre-internet, so that wasn't a concern yet. But to me, I look at that now as like a missed opportunity. It's like, had I looked, I might have. I mean, because being in the truth all those years, that shapes your life. It takes you out of a normal flow, which in some respects is a blessing. Others is a disadvantage. Just like I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and Casa Grande Convention in those years was right at the beginning of September. And so, almost the first day of school, you had to take a note to the teacher. It's like, little Stevie's going to have to miss his class on Thursday and Friday, but if you give him assignments, he'll work on it between meetings. Like, no, he won't. That's what I'm thinking. I never worked on anything at convention for school. But you felt like you were, catching up all the time. And then what little boy doesn't want to play baseball? you know, and you couldn't be in
Mm-hmm.
Little League because, well, you got to go to Wednesday night meeting. That's what practice is like.
Yep.
And again, in one, like I said, in one respect, maybe a blessing, in another, you know, a little bit of a curse. But when you reflect back and know, and I haven't talked about William Irvine, but when I read Cherie's book,
Mm-hmm.
it's like this lady wasn't just sitting in her chair speculating on what happened. She went and checked it out. And it's like, it's not an urban myth.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a legend. It's something that happened. So, you know, when you talk about what was sold as apostolic succession from
Mm-hmm.
Jesus to today, it's like, well, guys, you barely made it out of the 1900s going backwards. It's like William Irvine. You know, people go, well, I've heard that story. Not a story. It's for real. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe the words
Mm-hmm.
that Mr. Irvine used were, "This is a grand experiment." It's
Yeah.
like, well, okay. And then I'm sure if he were here today, if he were honest, he'd say it was an abject failure. It didn't pan out. Actually, you know, knowing that for sure now, and I don't know if I read it on CCF or where, but you know, this business about looking at the world through meeting colored glasses. Somebody used that
Mm-hmm.
term. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm reading these books, and it's like, you know, not to say I got you, but it's like I want to find out what really happened, and I'm convinced that that's what really happened. I just wish the ministry would have said at some point, it's like, you know what? It has come to light that our origins were a little different than advertised, but just so you know, it was the best we had at the time. We think it aligns as closely with, you know, biblical times as we can get.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Mm-hmm.
apologize for any convenience and for lying to you. But, you know, that didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen and probably never will.
Yep.
So I'm glad now that there's the opportunity to learn. Another thing too, in working for all those airframe companies, I did travel
Mm-hmm.
around the world, literally either direction more than once. And I met a lot of friends, went to convention in England, went to convention in Dubai or the United Arab Emirates. It was not in Dubai, but out. I've been in batches in Bogota. I've been in batches in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
And all the people and all the workers I met, I got to say, they incredibly kind to me. Just
Mm-hmm.
very, very kind. That was grace in action, you know. It's funny, when I was first in the Air Force, I went in 19 years old. I turned 20 by the time I made my first deployment after training, but I went to Mildenhall, England.
Mm-hmm.
There was a family in a town called Troston. They had meeting. Their names were the Rathbones. I don't mind mentioning their name. And they would drive, I don't know how far to get me, but I'll say at least 30 minutes, you know, each way.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a lot of money to begin with, but it never occurred to me, can I, you know, help you folks fill up with fuel? And those poor people
Mm-hmm.
at the time, they were paying as much for a liter of fuel as we paid for a gallon. You know, God bless them for being so kind. Yeah, just a cute story about those people. They were very, very proper, just
Yeah.
and very, very British. I mean, beyond what you can
Mm-hmm.
imagine. But they had me over one day after meeting, and we finished the dinner table, and Mr. Rathbone, he said, Steve, he says, there's something we'd like to share with you now, but we cannot tell the workers. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your secret's safe. What you got? And then he said to his son, John, he goes, you get that end, John. And then the old man, he grabbed one end, and the surface under the tablecloth of the dining room table lifted off. And underneath
Mm-hmm.
there was a snooker table. So you could play
Oh yeah.
billiards. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's just like, oh my goodness, this is kind of funny. You know, you're tricking the workers. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, how bad could
Mm-hmm.
a snooker table be? But anyway, up until just now,
Mm-hmm.
well, I mean, I've told my family, but I never did betray their secret, certainly not to the workers. But yeah, they were
Mm-hmm.
uncommonly kind to me. And I got to say, I never I never went to the brother workers batch in Dubai, but because they always liked to come to me, I'd stay at the JW Marriott Hotel, and you could get a breakfast of your dreams there. And you know, if you're a guy from Canada or the
Mm-hmm.
U.S., and you were a big guy and liked food, like, yeah, come see Steve, take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
But the workers in Bogota, those ladies there, when I saw their place, that was a little bit grim. I mean, it was okay, but they they weren't suffering, but they weren't luxuriating either. So God bless them for
Mm-hmm.
going through that. The batch in Hong Kong, they had a nice functional place. They're not luxurious, but certainly functional and clean and nice.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, now reflecting back on all of that, it's like I've received grace, and now, regardless of where I go to church or what I choose to believe in my heart, I do need to reflect grace back to others. I think that's my job. That's my calling. Thankful too for all the people. A lot of people here in the St. Louis area are now outside, and
Mm-hmm.
we have good fellowship with those people. There's no acrimony about, well, why are you doing this or why are you doing that? Why aren't you doing this? It's
Mm-hmm.
we all accept what the other's doing and love them for trying. And that's the other thing too. We always heard about false churches, false doctrine,
Mm-hmm.
and again, collectively, it's like, how could all of us just go, well, you say it's false and you say it's wrong. And what's it based on? Have you actually gone to their church? Have you seen? Do you know? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
now I go to these churches and it's like there is a lot of joy in the room. There's a lot of joy.
Yeah.
There's been some very good messages. There's been some
Mm-hmm.
terrible music. There's been some good music too. But
Mm-hmm.
my view towards all churches now, it's like these people are my brothers and sisters in Christ. If they're, you know, Hindu or Buddhist or whatever, they're still my brothers because
Mm-hmm.
they're manifesting their love for the God they know. And I mean, had I been born
Mm-hmm.
in, India, I would have a different worldview for sure. And I'd be just as convinced that I was
Mm-hmm.
doing the right thing. So I'm just happy that people know their maker, they love their maker, and they rejoice in their maker. And
Yeah.
now we're all free to do that. So
Yeah, I appreciate that.
before Dean Brewer and those other big life events, I'd actually started to look into, not as a substitute for church, but just more present and aware living. And I started a meditation
Mm-hmm.
practice.
Mm-hmm.
And that invariably kind of leads you to read some Buddhist teachings and some Hindu
Mm-hmm.
teachings. And
Mm-hmm.
there's stuff that doesn't erode your Christianity or your Christian beliefs. It's just be kind, love, compassion. So
Yeah.
being free to accept, everything out there that's good. I mean, you can let go of the rest, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you one last little story. I was working on a project in Doha, Qatar,
Mm-hmm.
and we went there to pitch a system for the Air Force there. And we got done, and the guy was not real wowed with what we had, and he pulled me aside. It was a fighter squadron that he ran. He was a general, one-star general that
Mm-hmm.
ran a fighter program. They flew French Mirage fighters at the time in Doha,
Wow.
and he took me to their ready room, kind of where they get their flight plans, and it's kind of the hub, the nerve center of the squadron. He says, "Can you make all of this digital?" I just told him, I said, "Well, General," I says, and I worked for Boeing at the time. I said, "I don't have a product I can roll in here and make that happen. I don't even have a product that I can modify to do that for you.
Yeah.
But I've got the ability to help you develop a unique custom solution for you. I mean, then we'll, license it to others." And anyway, he appreciated the fact that I didn't try to fudge on what I
Mm-hmm.
had because I didn't have anything. And anyway, he
Mm-hmm.
agreed to work with us, and that system is now operating in different places around the world, which is good. But anyway, after that conversation, he goes, "Hey, Steve, will you pray with us? Because it's time for the noon prayer." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my goodness," I'm thinking, and I was in the Air Force for almost 25 years, most of it as a reservist. But anyway, in the profession of arms, and my question in my head was, he wants me to pray with him. What's the least offensive answer? Yes or no? It's like, I don't want to offend, but I'm thinking in terms of, okay, not me as an American and him as a Qatari. Let's just think of, brothers in arms. And I said, yeah, I'll pray with you. And
Mm.
I had no clue. But they had a little mosque and a squadron there, and we went in, and there's somebody that leads the prayer. Then everybody just kind of follows form. And there was an enlisted guy on either side of me, and one of them he was vocalizing the prayer, and the other he was kind of sub vocalizing. I'm like, well, I'll mumble with this guy, and we'll get through it. But anyway, as you go, a lot of the movements require you to be sitting on your haunches, and your knees are
Mhm.
getting
Mhm.
max stress. And anyway, towards the end of his prayer, I was for sure praying to my God. It's like, God, you got to get me off of these knees right now. Anyway,
Mm.
then I went back to the team I was traveling with, and they're waiting for me to go to lunch with them. And they're like, where have you been? I said, the general asked me to pray with him. And this friend of mine from Norway, he was on the team. He says, Steve, he says, that's a very great honor. I said, that's what I thought. I'm glad to hear you say that, because I did have a
Mhm.
question. But
Mhm.
anyway, and a lot of people have some concept of Islam, but regardless
Mhm.
of the extremist factions of Islam, it's like they're just like us. They want to go to work every day,
Mhm.
they want to provide for their family, and they don't want the government to trifle with them. They just want to be free and love. That's all they want to do. So
Mhm. Mhm.
um, I know I promised I was going to shut up. One more thing. We did have after we broke away, we did have a unsanctioned meeting for a while,
Mhm.
and there were, it'd go from anywhere from 3 to 7 people. And the good news
Mhm.
about that, the really good news was that our daughter, when she went to law school in Texas, she didn't go to meeting, after that. And we weren't terribly worried, but it became apparent even before any of this that she had maintained a relationship with God, which was good. But anyway, we got to have
Mhm.
fellowship with her. So sometimes we'd have a meeting at her house, sometimes we'd have it at ours. But anyway, we dispensed with the form. We didn't sing any hymns because I had a big deal about the hymns. It's like I don't want anything with the workers' fingerprints on it. There's
Yeah.
hymns that have been modified to satisfy a certain agenda, and it's like, well, unless that was put to a vote by all of us, it's like that's nonsense, and I won't stand for it. And I don't want to sing those hymns. Anyway, we didn't sing any
Mhm.
hymns at all. We'd start with a prayer for the emblems, the communion, just one prayer,
Mhm.
pray for both in once, and then then it's a nice
Sure.
flow. The bread follows, or the wine follows the bread. But I had some family come in one day, and then there was another lady. Anyway, 3 divorced people in there. I said, look, I don't know about anything about anybody's life necessarily, what you're doing now. Anyway, your marital status to me is a non-player. I don't care. You are welcome. If you want to commune with Christ here and now, let's go. So
Mhm.
off it went, and then one of my relatives says, "Do you have to be baptized?" Not for me. It's like,
Mhm.
if in your heart you feel you want to partake, that's good enough for me. And even when I was
Mhm.
the elder here and before, it's like I would always start the emblems to pass them, and then I would make sure that nobody could hand it back to me, that everybody got to touch it. And it's like, if
Mhm.
you didn't take it, that was your choice, and I support your
Yeah.
choice. But I wasn't
Mhm.
ever going to make a judgment on somebody like, oh my goodness, you were married, now you're not. That
Yeah.
was in part due to my mom. She was married to a guy that was divorced, and then the workers told her that she had to divorce him to keep her
Oh, yeah.
salvation. And like, are you kidding me right now? I was 8 years
Right.
old when that happened. But anyway, that is my unique story and perspective. And God bless
Uh-huh.
you for listening to it.
I have so many questions about all your time in the Air Force and all your time in all the different areas of the world, but I so appreciate the perspective that you shared of seeing the different batches and meeting the different people, going to prayer with the general. I'm just so amazed at the clarity you've had through your life that it's about people and it's about brotherhood and sisterhood and it's not about systems. And it just weaves through your entire story that that is clearly a value of yours.
Yeah, it is. And before I forget to, I mean, you're kind of at the top of the pyramid, but and there's a number of them, and certainly Cynthia Lyles, Lauren Rose, Sherry with Autry,
Hmm.
yeah, Kyle and Carrie Hanks. Anyway, the work you guys have done that was out of love and agenda
Hmm.
free, very impressive work. I mean, this
Hmm.
platform of CCF
Hmm.
and the shared communication, very, very impressive. And I joined
Hmm.
CCF, but wasn't terribly active, and but always your videos. I just found those easily digestible and always very helpful because the honesty, and that's the other thing too. Some really smart people you interviewed. It's like, my
Hmm.
goodness.
Hmm.
And some
Hmm.
just, so unassuming and humble and just had a glad message to share. And anyway, what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get to is thank you. Thank you for that. I'm very grateful. And
Hmm.
please keep it up. And
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And you're very welcome. And to the point of being a pyramid, I just really feel like there's not a pyramid. All of the people have been working so hard across the board, you in your area. You mentioned, talking to your overseer. It's like the grassroots people across the board as what's brought transparency and accountability and clarity to the whole crisis. It's being people driven is just so beautiful. And I just appreciate you sharing your story and everybody sharing their stories because it's the collective coming together of stories. It's not just one story here or one person there, but it's everyone together that has really brought the power.
well, I thank you again for your time. And I'll look forward to
Hmm.
seeing what's next.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Thank you,
absolutely. Thank
Becky.
you so much for sharing. Yes.
You're welcome.